Hello, welcome back to CIT-05-L3 Splunk deployment in the SIEM introduction course. Okay, so in this lab, we're going to learn about the Splunk installation process and how to get log information from a Windows client. The lab mission is to install Splunk Enterprise on a Linux Ubuntu machine, and we're going to connect and gather logs from our Windows OS using Splunk Universal Forwarder. In other words, we're going to get some log events from our Windows 10 device that's going to be forwarding and shooting it over to our Ubuntu 2004. This lab should take us about 45 minutes. And the requirements is that you have a basic understanding of Windows and Linux logs, you have a SIEM environment, and knowledge of the Splunk installation process, which we will go through this lab. You also, in your VirtualBox environments, you need to have an Ubuntu Linux VM, which is what you see here, a Windows 10 VM, which is what we have here, and you need pfSense VM, which is what we already have here. And these were built in previous exercises in CIT-05, L1, L2, covered those two installations. Okay, so let's go right into it. It says perform a fresh installation of Ubuntu Linux by following the instructions of the Ubuntu guide. Once again, if you don't have any of these installed, go back to one of the previous exercises and get a fresh install. On the Ubuntu VM, and please disregard the spelling here, it'll still work just the same. Click on Settings. And it says make sure that on the network side, we have internal network, and we have the Vulnerable Corp network. And in the Advanced tab, we want to make sure that we allow VMs and the cable is connected. We'll keep the MAC address as is. I click OK. This is good. Okay, so now we're going to go into the Splunk section here, and we're going to install Splunk in our environment here. So I'm going to a terminal, and I'm going to type terminal. And I'm now in a terminal prompt. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit higher. And also, as we always say, let's give ourselves a little bit more real estate so that way it's easier on the eyes for us. So I'm going to make my screen just a little bit bigger so we can see this here. Okay, so it says go ahead and type in IP and see what IP address we have. And I see the IP address that I have here is that I have a 10.0.0.13, which is fine. And it says go over here. If the machine did not receive an IP address, I can do that manually. In other words, rather than a DHCP assigned from the pfSense box, I can go ahead and statically configure an IP address. How do I do that? I click the wired settings here. And in wired connected here, there's some options here. I click on settings. Settings will take me to this screen, connected. And if I click on the gear icon, I get an IP address. If I want to, I can click on the IPv4. I'm not going to do this because, as you can tell, one, I have DHCP. I prefer to have a dynamically configured IP address because if I forget to actually put this in and forget the IP and then do this manually and put in an IP address, it can cause some problems later. But if you have to do that, you can go right into this here, navigate to IPv4. You put in 10.003 over here in the address. The net mask is 255. The gateway is 10.0.0.1. You put all those numbers in here, and the DNS is 10.00, and your screen will look like this if you're going with the manual option. I am not going with the manual option because I have DHCP configured. So I just jumped right over into the DHCP configured environment. Click close. And it says provide, now drag and drop the Splunk document, the Debian-based file onto my Ubuntu's folder. So let's go here. Let's see what do we have. I don't have anything in my folder. It's empty. And I'm going to open the downloads folder on my host machine and see what files do I have. So now I have Splunk. I have a couple of flavors of Splunk. Now it says go ahead with the 8.06. I went with the latest version. So I went with 8.13, same concept. as anything else. So rather than this file, I'm going with this one, and I'm going to drag and drop onto the folder. Now, if this doesn't work, it says in the virtual machine, I must have guest additions installed. Let's see what's going on here. So I go to devices, drag and drop is on, good. So I should be able to basically drag from here and put it there. And if it's not working, I may need to do a reboot, which means that I will be back after a quick reboot. So hold on 1 second. So we're back again. In this case here, my Ubuntu machine needed a reboot because after the fresh install of the guest additions, I needed to install and reboot the machine. And it says over here this tip: in order to drag and drop the files into your Linux machine, you must have the guest additions installed, and you may need a reboot. In my case, I did. So let's go back to this VM. So I click on Ubuntu, I click on Show, and in this case here on my host machine, my Mac, I have a couple of versions of Splunk installed. And this one here is Splunk 8.06 that you can get from Canvas, but you can also download Splunk right from the Splunk website. And I'm just going to click and drag and move it over into that folder, which is the 8.1. Again, similar, very similar stuff. And what we have here is I have the downloads folder, and I have Splunk installed here, and it says in the terminal I'm going to actually install this. So I'm going to run the package manager here. So I'm going to open in a terminal, and I right click right into this white space. This allows me to go ahead, I'll do an ls command, and in this case here I'm going to sudo dpkg, which is the package manager, -i. I'm already in the install. I'm going to do Splunk, and it's going to ask me for my password, and it doesn't understand, so I must have spelled something wrong. pkg -i. And now it's unpacking Splunk, and it says select previously unselected package. So we're just going to stay here and just wait for a while until this package is completely unpacked. Okay, I'm back. Let me just get rid of this folder for my downloads here. It says it's complete. I'm going to just clear my screen. The next command is that we want to actually start Splunk. So we're going to sudo opt. I'm just using command line completions here. Splunk. Going to the bin directory. Then I'm going to Splunk space start. We're actually going to start the service. And at this point, this was step 9 where I ran this command, which is the start command. And at this point, it's going to go through this whole process of giving me the whole license rights. I'm just going to quit out of this. In other words, I'm going to agree with the license. As you see in step 10 here, I select Y. And at this point, I get to create my admin credentials. My administrator username is going to be admin. And the password is going to be something I can remember, but that's also strong. Splunk approves. The process is now started. Now it says on step 12, note that the Splunk web interface presented at the end of the process will be used for authenticating. It's actually hyperlinked at this point, so I'm just going to click it just to see what it looks like. So I'm going to open link, and let's see if Firefox will open that up for us. And while Firefox is doing that, I'm going to go into step 1 here, which it says before launching Splunk, I have to go to the web application. We're going to make a change in its retention. So I know it's working, so this is fine. I do get the connection is not secure because there isn't a signed certificate, but technically this is not what I'm supposed to do. So let's go back into the command prompt, and it says go ahead and do sudo nano. I'm going to be a little lazy here in this case here because we do have guest additions installed. I'm going to right click on this, copy, and I'm going to paste that command in so that way I can get right into this file. And it says we're looking for the frozen time periods. So I'm going to Control W and find, I'm assuming the word frozen is unique in this document. Yes, frozen time period in seconds equals this number here. It says we're supposed to turn it into, oops. Just make sure I didn't do anything bad here. Anytime something like this happens and I'm not sure, I just basically Control X and I say no. I don't want to write to it, and I'm just a little careful. I up arrow and open nano up again. This time I'm going to Control W to find that line. It's frozen. I come back in, and in this case I'm just going to make sure that I do this properly. And the number that I'm looking for is 259-200. I like that. I Control X to write to the file. I say yes to save it. And there's my information. Now I can cat this if I need to, but the reason for the change is to alter the default retention logs of Splunk. So we're shorting the retention logs. Okay, so we wrote out the file here. This is the time that we had spent. And it says on Firefox, which is here, go ahead and put in the local host port 8000. So I went to it directly in this case here, but let's just make sure it works the way we expect it to work, which is on 127.0.0.0.1:8000. And it takes me into the Splunk Enterprise. And in this case here, we're going to put in the admin credentials that we created in a few steps above. I'm not going to save. I don't want to show the password. And now I'm in the fresh install of Splunk. Now it says in helping you message, you got it. I'm going to click on got it. So there's some instrumentation settings here. I'm going to click on got it. I'm also going to change this screen here, virtual size, so we can see this a little bit better. Choose what I share. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to bring this over so we can all see this a little bit. Just let's get a little bit more real estate here. Okay. Well, I mean, 2 weeks, I didn't get that prompt, but that's okay. And then in this area here, I'm going to add data. So let's just see what's going on here. Okay, I just have to reload. In this option here, I can add data. It says welcome administrator. I'm going to skip this option. When it scrolls down, I can click on monitor. I'm going to click on files and directories as it says here. And then I'm going to browse. Let's just make sure we can browse. And let's just get this a little bit better. I'm not happy with the way this is looking. Okay, we're back. I wanted to get a little bit more real estate with the browser. It was just a little small and we needed to reboot, just make sure the guest editions was properly installed and Splunk was started. So here we are, we're on page 16, step 17, where we select files and directories. And we're asked to browse. And then we get this screen here where it says find a directory var. So we have the var directory, and let's expand that. And then we're looking for log, var log. So we have var log, we click select. In the next field, we click next. And in the review option, we're at the review option. We take those default settings. We take a look at the submit and review page. Source path is var log, directory monitor, automatic search, John Doe default. So this matches with this. I click submit. And I get a nice check mark, and it says, to verify that Splunk is able to view, let's go ahead and add a user. So what we're going to do is in the Splunk, to verify that Splunk is able to view the logs, use the command sudo to test log. So let's go ahead back to terminal. And we're just going to clear the screen, and we're going to sudo add user. And it's going to be test log. And the password will be password1. We type the password. We'll take all these defaults. It's information, yes. It looks like the screen over there. So we're looking good there. In the Splunk web interface, let's go back to apps. So it says go here to apps. Start searching. Let's go back here. We're going to skip. And we're going to, in the search field, let's do test log. And we see some activity for test log. We see changed user test log, password change for test log. Okay, so this looks good. Now let's go over to lab task 3, install Splunk Universal Forwarder. So I'm going to minimize this and actually just get this VM out of the way. And we're going to go to our Windows 10 machine. And in the Windows 10 machine, it says that we're going to start our Windows 10 machine, and we're going to drag the file Splunk Forwarder. Okay, so let's go to Splunk Forwarder. So in my downloads folder, let's see, where do we have that? I already have it installed, I see here, but let's go ahead and just make sure we know how to do that. In the downloads folder, assuming I have drag and drop, I have a Splunk Forwarder file, 8.06. It's an MSI file. I'm going to drag and drop it from my host operating system into my guest operating system. And in this case here, why not? Let's just say replace it, copy it over again. So it says double click it. And we're going to follow these on-screen instructions. We're going to click, customize options. In step 3, it says click next. Pick the default path. In this case here, it says click next for the Universal Forwarder. Make sure the forwarder is installed on the local system. Next, we're going to look at the security logs of the Windows 10 device and send it over to Splunk. For the creation of the admin, we're going to say the username is going to be Splunk, L-U-N-K. The password will be what you see on the screen. I'm going to pick something that I can remember. I click next. And my passwords do not match, so let's see what's going on here. Okay. In this case here, use the IP address in our Ubuntu machine. So I'm just going to verify. I'm going to go back to my Ubuntu machine. Let's just show that device, show that machine, just tucked away over here. And I'm going to do if config to get the IP address, and it's 10.0.0.13. So I'm just going to bring this down here just so I can take a peek. Go back to my Windows machine, and I'm going to 10.0.0.13. And the default port is 8089. 8089. Okay, great. I click next. Same deal. It says put in the same IP address for the receiver index. So we do 10.0.0.13, and this time my default is 9997. This is step 10 of page 26. I click next, and then we go ahead and click install. I'm presented with this screen here. I say yes. In this case here, we're going to click finish. We have some Windows Firewall work to do here, so I'm going to click on Windows Firewall to get into the Windows Firewall, and we're going to disable the firewall. So turn off Windows Firewall. So turn Windows Firewall on or off. We can toggle that. It is off and off. It was already off. So great. Typically this is on, by the way. I was going through a few other exercises before making this video, so we just verify that these settings are in place. I click OK, and then I go back into this task from the Windows machine in the Splunk interface back into my Ubuntu machine. I go back here, and let's just bring that on top so we can see that again. I'm going to go into the interface and go into settings, and we're going to forwarding and receiving, as it mentions here. And we're going to configure a receiver. I'm going to add new. It asks me what port would I like to listen to. We're going to listen to 9997. I click save. Awesome. Then in settings, I want to add some data. In this case, we're going to data from a forwarder. We're going to pick up that Windows 10. And then in this window here, I see the desktop. I pick that desktop, and we're instructed to rename it to PC1. This new server class is PC1, which is step 6. I click next. In local event logs, I add all, and then click next. In step 8, I click review. I review my settings. It's the Windows desktop. I'm looking at all these event logs, application forward system. I click submit. I can start searching. And I can just go ahead and copy this string here. Copy. Make sure all this is just taken out. Paste to overwrite. Or maybe I didn't. Copy the whole string. Make sure the whole string is selected here. I paste. And what do we have here? We have some authentication information here. The logon process, negotiate. We have a number of activities here that allows us to look at the Splunk. And there we have it. We have installed Splunk with Windows 10 sending some of its event details and security details over to the Splunk box, which is now Ubuntu. And that concludes this session of the lab. See you at the next one.